Hello, folks. JD Wessel back here with another episode of the Wildcat Breakdown. You guys obviously lost me last week. I was actually out in Vegas, but this week I'm back with the boys, Jaden Cover, Andrew Pfeiffer. How you boys doing today?
I'm doing good, JD.
Doing good. Ready to talk about some football?
I wish I could say that, but just being in Vegas kind of made me just go away from football for a week. So you know what? I guess you could say I'm back and I'm ready. Obviously, I didn't see the game that you guys played against Pavilion La Vista South. Do you guys want to give any input on that quick?
A lot of things went wrong. Almost everything offensively went wrong.
We won, by the way. We won.
Yeah, we won. That's the important thing. Special teams held us in there with a few big plays. Defense held their own, and we got to be better this week.
Mm-hmm.
Just one thing I noticed is that it was the lowest scoring game that Millard West has ever played, only scoring 20 points. Final score was 20-6 against a Papillion La Vista South team, which has been a team that shouldn't have been as much of a struggle as they put up. Like, given any playoff team, any playoff game, you're going to play a team that'll fight like crazy just to stay in their position, and they're going to do whatever it takes. But it was just surprising how much of a difficulty they were, especially for the Millard West offense, and how they only allowed 20 points on it, which is obviously the lowest we've ever scored this season.
As you were saying, lowest we've ever scored. Last time we scored less than 21 points is last year against Bellevue West, 21-14, and that's a little bit more excusable when you're going against the state champions of that year than going against Papio South, who finishes with the 4-6 record. So, credit to them. They had a great defensive plan, and we thought they would stump more, but they just straight up played football, and they played it well.
Now, one thing I did point out at halftime we were leading 13-0, which we were also leading 13-0 in the regular season when we first played them. So maybe very similar playing styles. It's just the thing that separates this playoff game from the regular season game is that how they played, like their ethic, and how hard they wanted to stand, and I think that's just what came into play on our offense, just couldn't get a rhythm going.
For sure, and yeah, I didn't see the game, but again, having the turnaround from beating them, 40-6, I believe, the first game, and then turning around and only having 20 points the next matchup, that kind of just shows that playing a team the second time is not as easy, and teams adjust very well when they see them the first time, and obviously they had a good game plan going in. But another thing to touch on is, these past couple weeks, you guys have been trying to incorporate the no-huddle offense, and obviously it's kind of struggled. Did you guys have issues in the game against them running the no-huddle?
Yeah, and we have multiple no-huddles we try to run and try to get going, and it just seemed no matter what we were running, no-huddle relies on, I'd say, a good first down play. When you have a good first down play, and let's say it's 2nd and 4, 2nd and 3, possibly another first down, then the tempo gets going, the defense is scrambling. But when you lose 2 yards and then you're trying to, get back to the line and run a play quickly at 2nd and 12, the defense has all the momentum. We put ourselves in bad positions, and for that game, it just wasn't good.
Time was definitely a huge issue, and there were moments when you'd see Gio get frustrated on the field because we almost had a bunch of delay of game penalties because clock kept running out because no huddle system, is supposed to make things go faster for the offense, but instead the play clock would start going right after the play would end, so giving the offense less time to get together and get a play going. Just the frustration from the offense kind of reflected on how our no huddle system was working this season.
Yeah, for sure, and we don't like to touch too much on the first round. Usually it's a flyby round, but, we had some interesting games this weekend, and I think to start it all off, we go to our big rivals. Well, I wouldn't call them our biggest rivals, but one of our big rivals, Millard South, a team we took care of pretty easy early in the season. And we've obviously seen that they're a whole new team kind of going into the last half of the season. They ended up picking up 5 wins, I think, past our loss, and from there on out they've been a pretty good ball club, and they actually just beat Lincoln High in the playoffs 21-19, which could stir up a lot going against Omaha North the second time. What are you guys' thoughts on Millard South?
Truly, I believe that game was the upset of the playoffs. I mean, every playoffs got at least one upset game, and not to discredit Millard South, I think they're a great football team. They're a rebuilding program, but I think this year they're hitting their stride and they're starting to see what it's going to look like for seasons to come. And I also think they got some of their athletes back, facing the suspension in the first game. They started to come together as a team that second week and began to build off that, which is why they started to win their 5 games. And just them beating Lincoln High and them even coming close to Omaha North the week before, I think I wouldn't sleep on this team. This team's got a lot of potential, but I don't think they're anything too great. I wouldn't say they're a state championship material team, but they could cause trouble for a lot of teams potentially in the run.
Well, I think the thing we're seeing with this team is, they're thinking, okay, we were 1-8 this year. Right now, we're looking in the second round of the playoffs, just beat a one-loss team. I mean, why not have the confidence that you can win it all? I mean, you've proven to everyone you can beat quality opponents. They beat a Lincoln High team that Millard West struggled with, and Lincoln High is a good ball club. They play well, especially in that environment down there. You can't hear anything. So for Millard South to go in there, to have the poise, especially Andy Real, because they had to have thrown it around at least a lot. I mean, their running game's coming together, but he is the catalyst for the offense. So you got a cold night, wind blowing, and he's able to lead his team in there and win a game. I mean, better weather this week against Omaha North. Who knows? It could be an entirely different ball game.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I just listening to what the players are saying on Twitter and listening to all we've heard from them over at Millard South is this team's ready to fight in the playoffs and they're not going to back down from Omaha North. They lost to them 28-17 the first matchup, and having a close game like that the first time, it's again really tough to beat a team the second time. So expect Millard South to come out with all guns firing.
Well, and I think honestly Millard South outplayed Omaha North there. I was at the game because we had a Thursday night game, so might as well go to Buell, see what's going on. And I was expecting to see Omaha North just roll over them, their running attack. But Xander Gray and Milton Starba had a tough time getting going. And the 2 scores that really separated the game were off of 80-yard touchdown runs. So they're holding them. It's just that once in a while, Starba would break free and run all the way down. And Millard South actually had it at a 4th and 5 at their own 50-yard line with 3.5 minutes left, down 21-17. And I think that's an obvious go-for-it situation.
Mm-hmm.
They punt the ball, comes a touchback, next play, Starbar runs 80 yards, and that's the difference in the game.
Yeah, just, it's those decisions that, they're risky, but I think they need to be made for Millard South to be on that next level. They're a scrappy ball club, and they can put up points. They can keep the defense. The defense can keep them in the game, and I think them taking risks is what's going to get them above the others.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And so then kind of just to stay on this side of the playoff bracket, what we got right now is Omaha North against Millard South. In Omaha North, they were matched up against Fremont, and that was pretty much a run-over game. Omaha North won 47-7. And then Omaha Burke, they played Millard North. Millard North, they obviously really struggled this year, ending the season 5-4. And from what we saw, actually they would be 5-5. From what we saw in that game, though, Millard North, put up a pretty good fight, I would say, in the first half, and then it kind of just
the
got
wheels
away
fell
from
off,
there. Yep.
Young defense.
And that was kind of the story of Millard North's season right there. I mean, just a lot of struggles, and I couldn't really explain to you how they drop off that fast within a year. I mean, they lost a couple key guys, but other than that, Millard North, they're usually one of the top programs. But yep, Burke took care of business, won 43-21, and then obviously Millard West winning 20-6. So that kind of wraps up the first side of the playoff bracket. And do you guys have any predictions for the Omaha North Millard South game? Just another quick little relapse on what we might see.
I think Millard South's going to give them a dogfight, and the game's going to be close. It's going to be a great game to watch, but I'm going to have to give that game to Millard North. They have the athletes.
Omaha North.
Omaha North.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me, Omaha North. And I just believe that the Vikings have the athletes. that Millard South doesn't necessarily have, and especially, you got running backs like Xander Gray and Milton Sarbaugh putting up huge NSAA records. They're even when they're sophomores and juniors, they're young running backs and they can make things happen, which is why I believe that Omaha North's going to have the upper hand of this game, especially against Millard South, which is a defense that necessarily, they kind of struggle with the run, which is why I think their weak point against Omaha North might be critical. So I'm going to have to give this one to Omaha North.
I'm going to have to give it to Omaha North, but I would not be surprised at all to see Millard South come away with the win. And the reason is because I actually argue Andrew's point of they struggle with the run, because the game I went to, they shut down Xander Gray. He's a big back, and they just stuffed him. They didn't give him any space to get going downhill. Milton Sarbaugh, they had him dancing around in the backfield, but he couldn't find a hole because that D-line they have. The strong point of Millard South, you can talk about Andy Reilly, you can talk about some of their other weapons. Their strong point is they have a good O-line and they've got a good D-line. And if they can cause trouble in the backfield and create limited space for North's athletes, I could see them coming with a win. Then again, Omaha North, I think, out-athletes them.
Yeah, and, everything in my mind says I want to pick Omaha North, but I'm going to have to pick Millard South. Last week I doubted them against Lincoln High. I thought Lincoln High was going to be, a potential semifinal matchup with Millard West, but I'd actually give the edge over to Millard South this week against Omaha North. Again, tough to beat a team 2 times in a row, and Millard South, they're hot right now. They're just bouncing back after the loss to Omaha North. It kind of gave them the sense that, all right, we can be beaten. We went on that nice win streak. It's time to saddle up and get ready for bigger opponents. Obviously, they had a close game to start with Omaha North, and then Omaha North had that final drive. But yeah, I think Millard South is going to come away on top. I think the Patriots are going to shock everyone in the state, and I think they're going to have an eventual matchup against Millard West, who I think will beat Burke. Do you guys have an opinion on the Millard West and Burke game? I know you guys are playing in it, and you're usually not supposed to think about the game too much.
It's, JD, it's definitely, it's going to be the game of the week. I don't think there's any other matches that stand out completely other than this one. You got 2 really good teams going at it. Burke's a great team, and what Kirk Peterson said to his players is this is going to be the best team you've played all year. Even though Bell West defeated Burke was in every position to win against Bellevue West.
Yep.
And I think just those mistakes and the key slip-ups, like Bellevue West threw a screen pass where the linemen were 20 yards downfield, which should have been called but wasn't called, and they scored off of it. Just plays like that Bellevue West was able to get away with gave them the win. But I thought Burke was in position to win the game, which is why I think we should not underestimate Burke. They are probably one of the best teams in the bracket.
Yeah, and I think with saying that, we've seen Bellevue West scrape by some wins, but, they still find a way to win. And, the loss to Westside, that's just a complete shootout. One of the highest scoring games we've ever seen in Class A football. But, yeah, again, Bellevue West is a team that knows how to win. And I think Burke is a team that can learn how to win. And I think this will be a big test against Millard West. And I also want to say that I think these 2 teams, whoever wins this, will be your state champion.
When I look at this game, I'm not going to be as bold in my prediction as JD. I'd love to if that came true. But if you look at it year in and year out, the quarterfinals is kind of, I'd say, the trap game for every team. First round, usually you get a higher seed like we did. You can have a bad game and win. You can't have any more bad games than win. You've got to find a way to turn it on, and it can't start on Friday. It's got to start on Monday and Tuesday. And luckily, I thought we had pretty good practices compared to usually Tuesdays are kind of your sloppy practice. I thought we were crisper than we have been most weeks. But, you look at this Burke team. They're preseason number 1. We're current number 1. And I compare Burke to almost what Millard West was last year. A team that played in close games. We lost to Millard North 26-21. We lost to Bellevue West 21-14 in the regular season. So we're the second round matchup no higher seed wanted to end up having. No one wanted to. Obviously we would have liked a higher seed, and we thought we deserved a higher seed. But when you lose 2 games, you're stuck in the middle of the road. And so Burke's in a similar position. They're a higher seed quality team, and yeah, they would have liked to have been a higher seed and avoid playing a Millard West. But at Millard West, Burke's a team you see on your schedule second round. You're like, hey, this is a quality ball club. We got to strap it up. But I think Bellevue West had the same mentality last year, and they brought it. So it's will the Wildcats bring it in the second round?
Yep, for sure. And it will be a very intriguing matchup. And I think, again, this will be, like you said, Andrew, one of the games of the week, if not game of the playoffs. This one could totally just kind of just rebuild the platform of what we've seen this year in the regular season. We've seen Burt kind of struggle, but we also saw them dominate the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season. And then you guys kind of turned it on right after the Bellevue West game, obviously given the lighter half of the schedule there at the end of the season. But you guys have definitely proved that you can compete with some of the top teams. We saw the Lincoln High game. That was a real big matchup and, a big test at Lincoln. But yeah, it'll be an intriguing matchup. And now we're going to flip it over to the top half of the bracket where we see the number 1 seeded Kearney Bearcats. Guys, what are your opinions on them? I mean, they come into the playoffs undefeated, now 10-0 after the win over Fremont, 45-0. Obviously, showing up on defense and offense. What are your thoughts?
I hate to say it, but as far as playoffs go, I think they're overrated just because they're undefeated. And as far as the playoffs go, they scored the most points to be able to put themselves in that 1 seed position, which congrats to them. They're a good football team. I'm not taking anything away from them. I just don't think they should be number 1. I think that the way the playoffs broke out were a little weird. Were a little bizarre this year. It seems like a very one-sided bracket, but yeah, I mean, anything could happen here. It's football, but I see Kearney taking the win this week.
Okay, yeah. Kearney again going against Westside, who also won in a crazy game against Lincoln Pius. And Pius is a team that beat Omaha North, and for Westside, they beat Bellevue West. So these are 2 teams that, well, at the time, these 2 teams were very much a threat to a lot of different playoff teams. And like you said, Andrew, Kearney could definitely lose to Westside. And Westside, they barely escaped that Pius game 43-39. The only thing I could see in that Kearney game is the lack of defense by Westside. I mean, Westside obviously struggles on defense, giving up 60-some points to Bellevue West. But I think that offense for Westside could get them rolling and maybe get them past Kearney. That's going to be an interesting game. And I think for both these teams, it's just going to come down to who wants it more, honestly.
Well, this is what I think, I'd say Kearney has up there with Millard West best defense in the state. We've seen that. They shut out a Millard North team. Obviously, Millard North is not what they were last year, the year before, and pretty much 10 years prior. Just all the way down the line, Millard North has always been good. But they beat them 42-0 at Buell. So they drove 2.5 hours, took care of business, went home. They don't have to travel anymore. They are at Kearney. They don't have to worry about bus legs. And that's going to be a hostile environment. Andrew talked about it last week. Small towns bring the biggest crowds. So it's going to be a huge environment. If you're Westside, how can your offense get going? You can't hear.
Yep.
You're going against a great defense. I think it's going to be a low-scoring ball game.
Okay.
And I think it's going to be decided by what Kearney's offense is able to do and can Westside's defense come up to the plate and make some plays happen. I have Kearney winning. I originally thought when I reviewed the whole bracket, Westside is way too good and not getting enough credit. But Kearney's got home field. And I think that's the main factor here.
Yeah, and that could be a big factor. And like you said, low-scoring ball game, that could be interesting. But then again, Kearney's one of those teams that, they can fight, and they definitely know that their defense is capable of holding an offense to a low amount of points. It's just really a matter of, like you said, can Kearney figure out the offense, and can Westside figure out their defense to stop either one of these teams. So with that done, we are then going to go to Creighton Prep, who won 20-17 in a close game against Grand Island. And Grand Island, now they're one of those teams that, they were one of those lingering playoff teams that you didn't know what they were able to do, and we knew going into a game against Creighton Prep would be interesting. Creighton Prep obviously won 20-17. That's a close ball game right there. And, when I was just checking the score updates, that was one of the games that were just field goal, touchdown here and there, and the game just ended up being a close one, and Creighton Prep ended up coming through, and that is going to set up an interesting matchup against Bellevue West. We saw Bellevue West last year in the playoffs against Creighton Prep, and they pretty much manhandled their side of the bracket. We saw them beat Millard West earlier, and then eventually go on to play Creighton Prep, and kind of
close first half as we saw.
Yeah.
But after that, not so close.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, they're going to be matched up against Bellevue West, and Bellevue West took care of business against Lincoln Southwest, 41-21. A team that we thought would be a pretty well contender this year, but the wheels kind of ended up falling off the bus for them. They dropped some close games.
Were you following that game too, the Lincoln Southwest Bellevue West?
No, not really, actually.
Southwest, I think, at one point was leading 21-17.
Okay, I did see that. Yeah, so Bellevue West, they can have their struggles, and we saw it against you guys. And Bellevue West struggled early, but they found a way to win. That's what Bellevue West is about. They find a way to win. Unfortunately, they had to slip up against Westside. That's one of the games that just didn't go their way. But I don't think that loss from Bellevue West defined what type of team they are. I still think they're a team that knows how to win ball games. They know their ability. They know their skill. And, oftentimes if they just go out and play their football, they're going to win a ball game. So I got Bellevue West and Omaha Westside meeting up again for another shootout. You guys have any opinion on those?
For sure, I think Bellevue West is going to sweep Creighton Prep in this game. I just think overall they have the better team. And like you said, I believe Kearney and Westside will be a shootout, but I'm going to have to give the win to Kearney. I think Bell West and Kearney are going to see each other for the first time this season in an interesting matchup, which I think Bellevue West might have the best outlook for the state championship. I think they have the best way the bracket broke out for them so far. And I mean, Kearney too. I mean, I think it's going to be interesting, for sure, these next couple of weeks.
And I think if Bellevue West and Kearney can get past these two games, these are kind of the under-the-radar games where you don't know how well these two teams will perform, seeing Westside's defense and seeing Creighton Prep's lack of offense sometimes. I think this is where we're going to kind of see how these two big dogs on this side of the bracket are going to compete against these, again, under-the-radar teams, and we're gonna have to see if Bellevue West can advance. I mean, last year a lot of people doubted them, and obviously they showed up, made it to the state championship game, and the rest is history there.
Mm-hmm. Well, in my opinion, on the top half of the bracket, I think there's only two teams that are going to come out of that. I think it's either going to be Kearney or Bellevue West. I know Westside, they beat Bellevue West, but I don't think you can beat Bellevue West twice. Mm-hmm. I think they're a team, especially with Westside. I mean, Westside's a talented team, but they're not up there yet.
And especially in the playoffs. Yeah. I mean, we got to understand Bellevue West is nearly a whole new team in the playoffs. I mean,
they are. And we saw that firsthand last year. But I think in the bottom half of the bracket, I could see any of those teams coming out of there. Mm-hmm. Millard South probably would be the shocker, but I could see any of those teams finding their way to come out of the bottom bracket. But don't get me wrong, the top half is talented, and I think they're just as talented as the bottom half. I just think the bottom half, the talent pool is closer together. It's like a melting pot.
Definitely going to be a dogfight on that lower half of the bracket.
Oh, yeah, I'd say. Let's go back to that quick. And what I want to talk about real quick is just, I would say the first round, it's usually kind of a flyby. Given the 8 and 9 seeds, you have those close games, but usually there's not much upsets, and I'd say this year in the first round we've had more interesting games and more competitive games than we've ever had, really. I mean, I feel like this year there's just a lot of evenly matched talent around the state. I mean, we're talking about having Westside go to the state championship game, and, a year ago it's Bellevue West and Omaha North, or Bellevue West and Millard West. And I think this year the pool's open right now. We have a lot of contenders out on the field there. I mean, we have Burke, who is ranked number 1, Millard West, who's ranked number 1 right now, Omaha North, a team who made it to the state championship last year, and obviously the state champs Bellevue West still in there. In the 1 seed in the playoffs, Kearney. So there's still a lot that can happen.
Mm-hmm.
You still got a lot of teams like West Side and Millard South who could fly under the radar, pick up some big wins. And I think this year, this is one of the most evenly matched spread of teams in the playoffs. I wouldn't say evenly matched, but I'd say it's definitely a competitive battle between each and every one of these games. And whoever goes on to the semifinals games, expect a dogfight from those two matchups.
Yeah, well, and I think there's good reason to why from what we saw in the regular season, there's a great indicator. I mean, if you go through, I'd say there's the top 5 contenders. And I'll start with, Omaha North. They lose to Pius. They have to have a fourth quarter comeback to beat Grand Island. I mean, you see those games, you're like, okay, Omaha North is beatable. You look at Bellevue West. Millard West dominated in the first 3 quarters. And then Westside beats them. Okay, they're not the world beaters we thought they were. Burke, preseason number 1, slip up against Omaha North, getting blown out. I mean, a little closer than its score looks, but kind of blown out, then lose to Bellevue West. Okay, maybe they're not as good as we thought they were. Then Millard West, they were flying by, can't finish off against Bellevue West, but then they continue to go on. So are they as good as they're rated right now? Who knows? I mean, we saw them close game against Papio South. What's going on with this team?
Yeah.
And then Kearney, I mean, who you would have told me going into the year, Kearney's going to be first seed in the playoffs.
But they haven't played anybody.
Millard North, Millard North puts up a game. You look at Millard South, lost to Millard North. I mean, Millard North is going to give you a fight.
Yeah, and
But they didn't give Kearney a fight.
I'd say the way Kearney did it is what is more interesting about that. I mean, how many did they put up in the first half? I
35.
Think,
They had a running clock
Yeah.
started the second half, and I'm not even sure Millard North crossed their own 50-yard line on offense.
Wow. Yeah, no. I'm not saying Kearney has a good schedule by any means, but they took care of business and they did what they needed to do to win. This is a team that's proved they know how to win ball games, and they're a team that's here to stay, and they want to make an impact being the 1 seed in this playoffs game. So I wouldn't count Kearney out by any means. I think what Kearney's looking at right now is just them potentially breaking down on offense and not being able to put as many points up against Westside and Bellevue West. I think Bellevue West and Westside's offense, the way they move, the way they function, is kind of a whole nother ball game than Kearney right now. But I'd say Kearney's defense, if they can step up and give it a close ball game, we're going to have to see if Kearney's offense can do their job. And Kearney again, very interesting team to see.
It's such a bipolar season. You have teams that are doing really good and that can win those key games, and then you have teams that aren't very good that are winning these big games, which is really surprising to see, especially Millard North. Like, I know they're out of the playoffs now, they're out of sight, out of mind, but the way they performed against Millard South, who could potentially beat the number 1 team, Omaha North, and almost did in the regular season, just shows, like, the talent's on every team and every level here. Like, you could be looking at upsets from all across the bracket. You never know what could happen, which is why it's such an interesting thing to watch, especially in Class A football.
Yeah, for sure. And guys, kind of just wrap it up here. We had a very interesting first round of the playoffs. What would you guys say your final thought is about the first round and what's to come for this upcoming week?
A lot of expected games went through the first round. Just I have to say the shocker was Millard South, obviously beating Lincoln High. But other than that, everything kind of fell out the way that everyone saw it to be. And I think it just sets it up for a really great second round, which, this Friday will all be figured out and we'll set up these potential championship teams. And I think it'll be a great outlook on who's got the game, who's going to play their game the best this playoff season. So
from personal, like Millard West standpoint, with Papio South, you just got to forget about it. Our coaching staff, we usually come in Monday, review the game we played last week. They're like, hey, forget about it in the past. How's that going to help us? Let's focus on the task at hand, because we've got our hands full this week with a Burke team that could have easily been, well, not easily, but could have been Omaha North. We're right there against Bellevue West, so we're looking at a team that could be undefeated. And so this week we've just got to simplify what we're doing, focus on the little things, and just bring the intensity. First 2 days have been cold in practice, but I felt it's been more intense. And so if we just we've got to find a way to escape the quarterfinals.
Have to handle adversity well, for sure.
It's going to be a close game.
And it'll be a very interesting game at that. And folks, I think we're actually going to wrap it up here today. This has been yet again another episode of the Wildcat Breakdown. This has been your host, JD Wessel.
I'm Andrew Pfeiffer.
And Jaden Cover.
We'll see you guys later.